research and advocacy for various stakeholders. Webinars are being conducted on the last Sunday of every month on various topics related to local democracy and good governance, with eminent speakers having in-depth knowledge and experience. This exercise has immensely helped in identifying the action points at various levels, besides motivating different stakeholders for an affirmative action towards strengthening the local democracy. Free and fair elections form the bedrock of a democratic country. In India, the Constitution envisages an Election Commission of India, ECI, and State Election Commissions, ACCs, for every state to safeguard the free and fair election, and it grants them with certain constitutional safeguards to secure their independent functioning. The State Election Commission is a constitutional authority that came into existence after the promulgation of the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment. The State Election Commission is an independent organization that has been entrusted with the function of conducting free, fair, transparent, and impartial elections to the rural and urban local bodies in the states. The powers and functions of the State Election Commissions are identical to those which are vested in the ECI in their respective domains. India's efforts in the decentralization represent one of the largest experiments in deepening democracy. While India has very robust democratic structures, including constitutional provisions for local governance, what we really need is to practice the robust democratic culture and giving life to our existing structures. On this note, I am going to invite Shri J.S. Saharia ji, who is the ex-Chief Secretary and former State Election Commissioner of Maharashtra, to share with us his experiences and observations and set the context for today's webinar. Shri Saharia sir is also the chairman of the International Society for Human Awakening and Development, ISHAD. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Ania. At the outset, let me welcome all of you for this webinar on a very important subject, elections to local self-governments, challenges before a State Election Commission. And I'm happy that Dr. Ramesh Kumar has been able to join now, so we will not be able to change the sequence of the things at all. As you are aware, the Constitution was amended in 1992. As you are aware, the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendments, with the idea to bring local governments both urban and rural, Nagar Palika, Mahanagar Palika, Zilla Panchayat and Gram Panchayat to the center. As you are aware, of national polity, this amendment was done. Power to the people, that was the basic concept. More than 25 years have passed, but still the local governments have not got their due share of dignity, their status and role in the governance. And there are a variety of reasons for that. I will not go into those reasons at this juncture. The political economy, the financial autonomy, the administrative autonomy, a lot of work is required to be done in that. As a part of this constitutional amendment, state election commissions have been created in every state to conduct elections in a free, fair and transparent manner and before the expiry of the 5-year period or the legitimate period of that elected body. Though a lot of work has happened, still there are large number of challenges which the state election commissions have to face in day-to-day functioning of the election commission. This basically relates to two things. First, mindset of the various stakeholders, including the senior bureaucrats, including politicians, including public at large, various stakeholders, their mindset. And this mindset includes everybody treats the State Election Commission as a subordinate office either of the government or of the Election Commission of India. They are not willing, they have not been able to accept that the state election commissions are independent, autonomous bodies at par with the Election Commission of India. Honorable Supreme Court has clarified this in so many words. The State Election Commission is at par with the Election Commission of India in the domain of the state local bodies. And second thing is probably the hesitance on the part of the state election commissioners to exert themselves fully, especially in the state in which they have served for 3 decades and more. Most of the state election commissioners are the retired bureaucrats, and they become the state election commissioners in the same state. So, barring a few examples in the last 25 years, many have not been able to exert themselves. So this has created large number of, this poses large number of challenges before the state election commissions. This includes not providing the financial resources for conducting the elections, not providing the administrative resources, transferring the collectors during the process of the elections, not doing the reservation wherever the government is involved for giving the reservation to the seats, reservation for the various posts, not doing it on time, demarcation of the wards on time. So a large number of things are there. However, Honorable Supreme Court and the Constitution are very clear that the state election commissioner shall be responsible for conducting the election before the expiry of its period. So State Election Commission has to exert itself and to show its authority. However, as I mentioned, because of the variety of reasons, this does not happen. I'm very happy that today we have Dr. Ramesh Kumar with us, who, in spite of differences with the state government on many occasions, very ably conducted the elections. And I'm thankful to the judiciary of this country that they, from time to time, came forward and helped him in discharging his constitutional obligation. And I'm happy that Dr. Ramesh Kumar, who has personally experienced this for the last 2 years of his tenure before demitting his office, he experienced it for 2 years, is here to address us on this important subject, that is challenges before the State Election Commission. On the advice of Dr. Ramesh Kumar, we have invited the second speaker, who's an advocate of repute, Advocate Ashwani Kumar, Narasipuram from Andhra again, who has great knowledge, in-depth knowledge of this subject. I'm sure listening to the 2 speakers will immensely benefit the various people who are working in the area of the local democracy, be it the state election commissioners themselves. I can see many state election commissioners, serving election commissioners present today. I can see some of the retired state election commissioners, my esteemed colleagues today. I can see a large number of research scholars and other stakeholders. Some municipal commissioners are also here. I can see them. So I'm very happy that both the distinguished speakers are here today. I would like to, at this juncture itself, I would like to thank my associates, that is the Association of Democratic Reforms, who is doing great work in the area of parliamentary and assembly elections at the national level. I would like to thank CLGF, Commonwealth Local Government Forum, an international body of the local bodies of Commonwealth countries, who is basically devoted to strengthening the local democracy in the Commonwealth nations, and RSCD, our third resource organization, who are directly involved in empowering the elected women representatives in Maharashtra and some other states as well. I'm also thankful to, besides these organizations, the 4 individuals who are working with me very closely. Professor Dr. Ajit Ranadeji, he's the chief economist of repute. Mrs. Anua Kuwar, who is representing CLGF in India. Bhim Raskarji, who is working with RSCD, and Professor Mridul Lade. These 4 individuals are we are working together with the objective to bring local democracy to the center stage of national polity. I would not like to take much of your time now. I'm thankful to, again, the two speakers and the distinguished serving state election commissioners, retired state election commissioners, and other eminent personalities who are present here today. With these words, I'll hand it over to Anua to request Ramesh Kumar to give his speech. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It really gives me a great pleasure to introduce our first distinguished speaker for today's webinar, Dr. Ramesh Kumarji. Dr. Ramesh Kumarji belongs to the 1982 batch of IAS of Andhra Pradesh. He has done his master's in economics and is a PhD scholar. He also has a bachelorate in law. Dr. Ramesh Kumarji has held various positions and he was a finance secretary during 2006 to 2009. He went on to serve the Raj Bhavan between 2009 till 16 till his retirement. This is an event-filled period witnessing the bifurcation of the state in extenuating circumstances as well as the president's rule. On his retirement, on the recommendation of the governor of the combined states, he was appointed as the State Election Commissioner of Andhra Pradesh in April 2016. He demitted office end March 2021 after having completed his 5-year tenure. I would like to invite Dr. Ramesh Kumarji and share with us his thoughts on the scope and empowerment of State Election Commission, his own experiences, and his recommendations for the way ahead. Dr. Ramesh Kumarji.
Thank you, Anuya-ji, and thank you, Saharya-ji, for aptly putting in context the various issues with regard to the local self-government. I hope I am audible. Am I audible, yes. Anuya-ji? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
At the outset, I would like to thank all the participants for honoring me with their participation. Some of them are very distinguished colleagues. I thank them. Friends, the Election Commission of India and the State Election Commissions belong to the same genus. We are only separated by a point of time. We represent the same consciences which come from the same political milieu. The Election Commission is posited on the bedrock of superintendence, direction, and control of all election-related issues, as empowered by the Constitution under Article 324, which is a positive enunciation, and by 329B, which is a negative caveat, precluding the various litigations people may resort to through recourse to Article 226, the writ jurisdiction of the High Courts. It is not enough the provisions are built in. They have to be tested, then only they become robust. This happened in the case of the Election Commission as early as 1952 in NP Ponnuswamy versus Returning Officer Namakkal, where 329B came out with flying colors indeed. The next seminal moment is the case relating to Mahindra Singh Gill versus Chief Election Commissioner 1978, where the Apex Court has held that the plenary powers of the Election Commission under Article 324 are overarching. They said it is a reservoir of power to be exercised. In fact, the constitutional courts in the country have always empowered. There is not a case where the Election Commission has been seriously let down. Be it as may be, I would like to quote one or two observations in some very important cases. One is ECI versus Haryana in 1984, where the Apex Court has said that in timing of the elections, it is the Election Commission who is the final arbiter. This is in no uncertain terms. And in 1985, in Lakshmi Saran Sen case, the Apex Court has said, Election Commission is an institution whose dignity has to be protected by the courts because they are serving the cause of democracy. Need we say more with regard to the empowerment? But the true empowerment came when the Election Commission began to talk the walk with T.N. Seshan entering the scene in 1990. The best features and the best practices in the elections such as the photo identity cards, staggering of elections, model code of conduct, reigning in the executive, the errant executive, transfer of errant officials. This is all the handiwork of Mr. T.N. Seshan, and we owe a lot to him. And there has been no looking back after the departure of Mr. Seshan too. Now here I would like to embark on the relationship between Article 243, which empowers the state election commissions, which has been a subsequent amendment to the Constitution, and 324. Is the State Election Commission a younger brother? That is how I termed it. This question has been answered in a magical moment in Kishan Singh Tomar versus the Municipal Corporation of Ahmedabad, wherein in 2006, Justice Balakrishnan, who went on to become the CJI, delivered the judgment for the divisional bench. He had outlined 4 predominant issues. He said 243 is equivalent to 324. He said the state election commissions have to exercise their plenary powers independent of the state government. Third, he had brought into focus the role of governor as eminent domain. And most importantly, he had upgraded the consciency of the local self-governments at par with the state legislatures and parliaments for certainty and in-time holding of elections. Ever since this seminal movement, number of our colleagues have taken recourse to this Tomar judgment, went to the court and got favorable orders directing the state government to hold elections. Such being the case, an issue arises. Why is that the State Election Commission is denied a seat at the high table, as it were? The state government accords a high seat to the Election Commission of India. My view is it is a perception problem. The state governments are in a mindset that they are the appointing authorities for the state election commissions, and the state election commissions have to be accommodative to the state governments. This is not so. I would like to quote with my own example. I have been removed as state election commissioner on 10th April through an ordinance. I went on appeal to the High Court, which has reinstated me on 30th May. It is a stinging judgment of 350 pages castigating the state government for colorable exercise of power. Important issue, what they said was, the appointment of the State Election Commission is the discretionary jurisdiction of the governor, and government has nothing to do with this. The state government has gone on appeal to the Supreme Court. The matter is still pending there. I'm a party. Though I have demitted office, I would like to defend the case in public interest. Earlier, I requested the empowered committee to implead as a party because the outcome will have a greater bearing for them. Having said this, the vulnerabilities of the State Election Commission, as Mr. Saharia has rightly said earlier, is with regard to provision of staff and resources for which we have to look to the state government. That has put us in a very difficult situation. The Constituent Assembly originally wanted to have an independent, impartial machinery, as well as including the election commissions under the charged head of the charge, but this did not materialize. Had it materialized, the hands of the State Election Commission would have been greatly strengthened. Friends, in my own case, I faced difficulties both for funds and resources. I made entreaties. I approached the governor to no avail. Finally, I went to the court. I filed it. I got an order. The state government then had blinked, and I have been provided the resources and the staff to my complete satisfaction. The last area of vulnerability for the state election commissions of late has been the media attacks and the state-sponsored attacks, particularly through the social media. It is pernicious. It is unmentionable. It is in bad taste. Every time there were instances, it required on my part to file criminal cases and to bring down the media posts. It is here that we require protection, and my own senior counsel, Mr. Harish Salve, appearing for me, highlighted the issue in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has asked Mr. Harish Salve and me to file an affidavit with regard to the social media attacks on the judiciary in Andhra Pradesh, which I did. The matter is seized before the Supreme Court. As I said, friends, autonomy is something which you seize it. Somebody doesn't give it willingly. You have to seize it. You have to seize the day or seize the hour, as the case be. Having answered this issue, I would like to move on to my journey and my discard with the state government. Why is that I had discard? Is it because I am a difficult person to function with? At the outset, I would like to say the discard with the state government has been primarily on account of criminalization of politics, which I have resisted with all my might as a constitutional authority, with the constitutional mandate with which I am privy to. Let me give the narration of the events. When a new government came in 2019, they expected me as constitutional authority to resign along with the nominated chairmen. I declined. Some of the new governments are so fresh and their aberrations can only be forgiven for what I call extreme youth and lack of experience. Then it is the state government which needed me because before the end of fiscal 2020, they wanted the elections to be held so that there are no financial sanctions, negative financial sanctions on the government. I have agreed to cooperate, but on my terms, that free and fair elections are non-negotiable. I got an assurance that this would be so, but all my expectations have been belied once the election notification has been given. Brazenly, the ruling party has given a target to their ministers, MLAs, to win at least 90% of the seats, otherwise they are in the line of fire. The downside is unmentionable. There has been prevention of candidates from filing nominations, forced withdrawals, allurements, monetary offerings. It is unmentionable. And what is the disadministration? What is the machinery doing? What are the observers doing? They are mute spectators. There is not a single case where they would give a report against what is happening, all these aberrations. This is the tragedy of our democracy, really. We are so dependent upon the administration. We had to work along with them. And when they prefer to shut eyes on fair election practice, what is that we could do? I am really concerned. At this point of time, however, an opportunity came to me by way of the COVID, which was looming large. I've been continuously in touch with our colleagues in Government of India. In fact, the Health Secretary was a distinguished cadre mate, and so many officers are also from the state there. They have highlighted about the tough regulations that are coming pretty soon. I called the Chief Secretary for a one-to-one meeting on 14th of March. I remember it is a Sunday. I had a 1 hour meeting. I aired my concerns on the COVID, and I could guess that there is no response forthcoming. On 14th March, Government of India has notified COVID under National Disaster Management Act to be eligible to access the National Disaster Management Fund. I took the cue, and on 15th March, I have stopped the elections using the plenary powers on account of COVID. I went public. I have castigated the tainted election process in the press, in the media, which is a major event. I have named 2 collectors, 2 SPs, 3 DSPs, 5 inspectors, including 1 inspector who had to be suspended for gross aberrations on the basis of the Sumato inquiry I had done. There has been a swift and a brutal retaliation from the state government. I have been attacked, I have been castigated, I have been threatened. And the state government officially said there is no COVID. Please go ahead. So I refused to do. It is state government went on appeal to the Supreme Court on 18th of March 2020. In the meanwhile, to set the record straight, I have reported the happenings to the Union Home Secretary just to put on record my concerns. And I have sought for additional protection for me because I am in danger. And the Home Ministry had reached out, I was given additional protection, the Commission was given the additional protection. And meanwhile, the Apex Court, it is the first bench headed by the CJI, who refused to interfere because of Kishan Singh Tomar, because of the SEC versus Haryana judgment, where is the election commission. Nobody else has a rule to interfere. Apex Court has in fact still in my hands. They said that while lifting the model code of conduct, the state government shall consult me whenever a new scheme is to be introduced. And a 3-week model code of conduct will be available to me whenever I hold elections, but of course with the consultation with the state government. This is acceptable to me. Friends, at this particular stage, I have won one victory, but the state government had a surprise waiting for me. The state government had brought in an ordinance on 10th of April, changing the eligibility criteria, thereby making only retired judges to be eligible to become the state election commissions. This is violative of the provisions of 243K and 243Z1. My terms of appointment cannot be changed during my tenure, adverse to my interests. I was removed, no doubt, but I went on appeal to the High Court. It took time because the High Court also was dealing with the COVID situation. But after I was ably defended by former stalwart Doyen Advocate General who served the two governments in AP, Mr. Sitaram Murthy and Mr. Ashwin Kumar, who is the advocate on record. And the state government had been castigated for culpable excess power and had been reinstated on 35. But I was not allowed to take office. The state government went on to appeal twice to Supreme Court, and twice Supreme Court had rebuffed. On the last occasion, Supreme Court had chided the state government as to why they are not implementing the High Court order. When I filed the contempt, the High Court directed the governor to receive my representation and direct the government to reinstate, and I did so. The governor only forwarded the representation. Be it as may, I had been reinstated. So the issue I would like to say is here, I have been saved by the Kishan Singh Tomar judgment. I stood my ground on a principled ground that there cannot be criminalization of politics, and the courts have supported me. I owe it to them and I owe it to the legal team. Now I come to the next part of the presentation, that is the success story. How I could utilize my plenary powers and hold successful, incident-free elections. Let me outline. When I took charge on 37-2020, it is like entering a hostile enemy state. I have been foisted with a secretary with the sole charge to stymie my function, not to cooperate with me. I took it in my stride. I waited for the opportunity. In the meanwhile, I was keeping a close watch on the COVID. My intention is to hold the elections, and it is an opportune time. And I could sense it was coming by November end when the COVID first wave started tapering off. Friends, I called it right a second time too. COVID, in fact, had abated between December and April all over the country. In December, I held an all-party meeting, which was boycotted by the party in power. And I was given a mandate and armed with a mandate and a consensus to hold elections, but the Gram Panchayat elections to start with in February. I released the intention statement, and the state government vehemently had opposed. I did consult the state government. I called the chief secretary, I called the JD secretary, I called the health secretary, I consulted them that I wanted to hold the elections. I showed my assessment that the COVID is coming down. They would not relent. This same government which said there was no COVID, now say there is no COVID. Be it as may, government went to the court, a single bench of the High Court had stated. I went on appeal to the division bench. I quoted the case law, Kishan Singh Tomar, of course, and Election Commission versus Haryana, where it is said that the Election Commission is the final arbiter. And the division bench of the High Court, the CJ, had vacated the stay. And what would the state government do? The state government went on appeal to the Supreme Court. And they took along with them the Employees Association. who said they are afraid for their life and they have threatened not to participate in the elections. They became a party in the Supreme Court. And in the Supreme Court, on admission, on 25th of April, 25th of January, there was a severe castigation of the employee associations as well as the state government. And that was the defining moment where there is a change in the attitude of the bureaucracy in the state. They could see the writing on the wall and they came round to support the election process and to strengthen my arms. Before this, there are two incidents which I would like to share with you. In my own secretary had engineered a mass leave campaign sometime in January. Come to know of it, I addressed all the staff. They have come round to support me. I have surrendered the services of the secretary to the government. I filed a case in the High Court for the staff and also resources, as I said, and I got it. And armed with all this, I addressed the collectors. I addressed the DG and the CS. I had also private spoken. I have great respect for their professionalism. I said, let bygones be bygones. The issue is not between you and I. I am also a member of the bureaucracy like you. It is between the government and I. And now the government have seen the writing on the wall. So let us do the elections. I want free and fair elections. I want these elections to be done just like general elections, no less. And I set the house and record. I dismissed the main perpetrator of this mass leave campaign in my office. And lo and behold, what happens? The minute I demitted office, this person is brought back. I'm sure he has been given the back wages also. But that is how the governments work. There is no sense of continuing purpose in government or a principled stand on some of these seminal issues. A person who opposed the conduct of elections have been rewarded with office after my demitting of office. That is how governments work. Friends, the long and short of it is, I held these, every district I visited in the state. There are 13 districts in the divided state of Andhra Pradesh. I visited every district. I addressed all the election staff. I exhorted on them the need to hold free and fair elections. And I said, you have to take ownership of the elections. I'm only watching you. I don't want you to make one misstep or I will act. As you know, I have already transferred 2 collectors to SPs and 3 SPs. Subsequently, 2 of them have been promoted as additional SPs, but they have been removed. And I have replaced 5 inspectors. I have posted fresh people to my satisfaction. I have created a sense of fear that the Election Commission is prepared to act. I held meeting even at the district level with all the political stakeholders that I want free and fair elections. Normally, the Gram Panchayat elections are held everywhere in 2 stages, but here I held in 4 stages with adequate safeguards, with a communication strategy. I went to the people, I said, I made adequate safety arrangements. You have nothing to fear. It is a duty cast on you to vote. And the cynics were saying that there will be a low turnout and people will not come. And what is the result? When the Gram Panchayat elections in Andhra Pradesh were held, the voting percentage recorded is 80%. It is one of the highest. The post-elections, there was no outbreak of COVID because of the safety protocols we have taken. 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the line, nothing. I have been vindicated. There is not a single incident of violence. There is not a single occasion necessitating a repoll. And this is perhaps the fairest of the elections. Normally, the elections are charged in the Gram Panchayats. They are not done on the party lines, but they are done on personalities. There would be frayed tempers, but this time, as the luck would have it, there was complete control over the situation. Encouraged by this, I have notified the municipal elections and held it on the 12th of March. This is in one stage. I have implemented the model code of conduct of the session era in the true word and spirit. There has been a complete policing. There is a moral policing. It is the districts who took charge. The atmosphere was such that people were hard to believe that there was an election that was taking place, though it is fought on the party lines. The ownership has been taken up by the state bureaucracy. What I would like to underscore here is there is a complete turnaround in the bureaucracy. The same bureaucracy which has been a mute spectators to the same aberrations had more than made amends. And I inspired them that we have it in us to run these elections. The one area where I have failed is to give a full translation to the plenary powers. I wanted to empower some of the people who were prevented to contest, who were forced to withdraw. I initiated a process of eliciting information with a view to issue an order under the plenary powers to enable them to contest. But here, the affected parties or the beneficiaries went to the court and prevented, and the court has appreciated my stand. They said that while they applaud my intention, they said the law will not permit me. And they said the clock, once it is set, cannot be turned back. But however, they advised me to unveil a measure of reforms, which would be of use for the future. This is what actually I done. I will come to it later. Having successfully conducted the municipal elections, I wanted to demit the office. I didn't want to notify the MPTC deputy elections because the 3 weeks mandated code of conduct would have pushed the elections beyond my superannuation into the month of April. I was not willing. The state government wants me to hold the elections. They would come and tell me, Mr. Ramesh Kumar, it is within you. Why don't you shorten the model code of conduct? And why don't you complete it in your tenure? I said, sorry, rule is a rule. I can't break the rule. I stood my ground. Government goes to the court to issue a direction to me to hold the elections. And the court did not oblige the government. Friends, I'm very happy to say that in this period, I have conducted elections in Andhra Pradesh. I went by the spirit of the model code of conduct. I done it in a fair, objective manner, without an incident of violence, without an aberration, without a report. I could do Gram Panchayat elections and municipal elections. I would give the complete credit to my colleagues, especially to a novel initiative. I have taken additional DGP level officer on deputation from the DGP from an outstanding panel. This officer, Mr. Sanjay, has been a valuable asset. For months together, he was with me in my office, liaising with the police department. What has also helped me was, while I was not allowed to unveil my own variety of election whistle app on technical grounds because the state governments have refused to lend the server, I have set up a call center which worked 24/7 during the Gram Panchayat elections and the municipal elections. And I think the way forward in the future is a call center and an app. Unfortunately, the app available with the Election Commission of India, they don't want to share with it. Election Commission of India, for that matter, they won't share anything with the state election commissions. They maintain an arm's length distance in most of these matters. There is hardly any collaboration. But at an interpersonal level, yes, but at a professional level, no. This is the success story that elections can be done in a fair and violence-free manner if you wish to, and the same bureaucracy would deliver the goods if you could inspire them, if you work with them. Now, finally, I come to the last part of the lecture. What is the road ahead? The road ahead for me is to secure a right for vote for myself. True, I don't have a vote now. As a moral gesture, I wanted to surrender my vote in Hyderabad and to take a vote in my native village, where I wanted to vote, where I'm born, bred. I went to school. My mother lives there. I have a house. I have property. I have relations. I have ties. And I am received every time I go to the village, which is very frequently, of course, to see my mother, not property. I would be received by the Tahsildar, And the same Tahsildar to whom I applied for enrollment as a voter turns down, saying that I am not an ordinary resident. I'm a serving state election commissioner and I've been turned down. And the collector, incidentally, who in this case has been my appointee, I have appointed this collector out of the panel selected. He's also under a lot of juris from the powers that be, and he also took the same line. Now my appeal is pending before the Chief Election Commission. I made a point. What happens to the migrant labor? They are not staying in the native place. They are living elsewhere. Will they be disenfranchised? Will not a person in India be eligible to vote at least in one place where he has fraternal ties, where he has a material, sometimes virtual presence? This is going to be a question of law which will be decided in future. If necessary, I am prepared to go to the High Court and knock the doors of the Supreme Court. I will not rest easy. The second issue is I am facing action through the Privileges Committee. I do not want to comment more than to say that I have filed a case to defend myself. The matter is sub judice. Friends, as I mentioned to you earlier, before I demitted office, I went to the governor, I gave the reforms. What is the feature of the reforms? Same thing Mr. Saharia has said. The discretion used by the state government is indiscretion. Be it in the electoral roll registration, be it in the delimitation, be it the reservations. These powers shall not be exercised by the state government and shall be in the domain of the State Election Commission. I would like to mention a novel suggestion I made. Normally, election commission's tenure ends. I mean, the brief ends once elections are done and the votes are counted and the winner is declared. In this case, I asked for a 2 months guardianship for the election commission to look after the post-election violence. Now, this is one of the issues which is engaging the attention of the country. You know the state where these things are taking place. I feel this is one of the reforms which is sorely needed. At this time, I would like to fall back upon my economics background and Alfred North, who has pioneered the institutional economics and the role of institutions in the development of the state and economy. The Nobel laureate, Alfred North, has said that he had made a study of the Western Europe and Latin America and said that where economic institutions are robust, development had taken place, and Latin America is languishing because the institutions have not taken root there. North has said institutions have 3 characteristic features. One, they are inclusive. They have a long-term vision. They work for the good of the community. They preserve the natural resources for the benefit of the commonwealth, not to be aggrandized by the ruling elites. What more, North has said that they bring stability to the property transactions and they brought the cost of economic transactions low. This gave stability and economic development to take place. Joseph Stiglitz and Paul Krugman, Nobel laureates in their own right, are all institutional economists. They value the role of institutions. The Supreme Court in Lakshmi Sharan case in 1985 said same thing, that the Election Commission is an institution whose dignity is to be protected by the courts because it is serving the cause of democracy. And whom are we to be protected from? The state election commissions. We are to be protected from the executive. We are to be protected from the dastardly attacks on us through the media, through the social media. This is the protection which is required. We don't have quantum powers like the courts, but we require some kind of institutional support. These are the matters engaging the attention of the Apex Court. Friends, it is also a matter of concern that the cost of transaction to keep the democracy alive in India is going up. What I mean is the money power shamelessly that is being used. The official which is misutilized in this game. There is a need to curb the money power. There is a need to curb the criminalization of the politics. Recently, the Apex Court part heard a matter where they want to shift the onus on the political parties to do due diligence on the criminality of the candidates. This is the need of the hour. And more importantly, long ago, the second Administrative Reforms Committee, Virappa Moily Committee, had recommended a collegium shall appoint the state election commissioners. Government is still sitting on this. Appointed by a collegium, a commissioner would have a moral stature and much more moral stand. Lastly, friends, I would like to digress. I would like to enlarge the focus of the concerns of the democracy. Today, the concerns of the democracy is over. One last thing, and conclude.
Yes, you just have last 2 minutes. Thank you.
Right. It is populism. It is direct benefit of benefits. These are unsustainable largesses, which the states are leveraging out of the future borrowing capacity. This is unethical. This is undermining. A time has come. The election manifestos had to be sanitized, and an embargo has to be used. And to say politics, otherwise, it is going to destroy the body politic. Friends, I would like to conclude with a favorite quotation from my favorite poet, Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into the good night. Rage, rage against the dying light. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your thoughts, your observations. It's been indeed quite a learning, at least for people like me, who tend to read in the media again what has been happening, what happened, but to really hear from you, to know the battles, the struggles, really the state election commissions have to really fight every day to ensure that the democracy at the grassroots really remains alive is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, sir, for your deliberations.
Yes, so I always love a fight. I always love a good fight.
Good,
very good. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ramesh. Yes.
Yeah. So the election commissions are indeed one of the bulwarks of the democratic system in India. And therefore, securing their institutional integrity is a task which falls on all the three branches: executive, judiciary, and legislature. The unwarranted interference by one organ of the state in the functioning of others should be discouraged to achieve a robust electoral system. Talking of this vital role played by the judiciary, I am very pleased to introduce our second distinguished speaker for today's webinar, Shri Narasipuram Ashwani Kumarji. Shri Ashwani Kumarji is an advocate practicing at the High Court of Andhra Pradesh at Amaravati and the High Court of Judicature at Hyderabad for the state of Telangana. His work is extensively based on writ and constitutional law, property and trade laws, company and commercial laws of practice. Ashwani Kumarji, for the period of July 2020 up to 31st March 2021, served as a standing counsel for the Andhra Pradesh State Election Commission. He was associated with the Advocate General for the state of Andhra Pradesh from 2009 to 2011 and was witness to various important constitutional issues. He assisted the Advocate General in matters relating to major constitutional issues and policy decisions of the state government. I would like to invite Advocate Ashwani Kumarji to share his thoughts. Sir.
Good afternoon, one and all. It's an honor for me to be on this platform, invited by a person of repute, Mr. Sri Saharia ji. And if I may just start off on this note, when I wanted to dig in on a brief information of Mr. Saharia ji, and then like the usual young inquisitive practicing advocate, I typed into Google Mr. Saharia and controversies. Google chose to delete the word controversy and it only gave me details of Sri Saharia ji. So likewise, no wonder Saharia ji and Ramesh ji are friends. Mr. Ramesh Kumar, the reason I'm here is because of my association with Sri Ramesh Kumar. And Ramesh Kumarji, and I was introduced to him thanks to my senior and my mentor, Sri Sitaramurthy Garu, a senior counsel and a former advocate general. And since we just stepped into the second day after Guru Purnima, invoking the name of my senior, allow me to comment on this very important constitutional issue, which concerns our existence of the democratic fabric in our nation. The reason why our country is such an successful and a nation which survived without any dictatorial roots, officially though, has is only because of the constitutional entities which survived during this phase of 70 to 75 years of say tumultuous weather and also environment in all respects. The first such institution which comes to be mentioned or to be brought to the attention of any person is the Election Commission of India. And of course, traveling along with the Election Commission, or say as the big brother to the Election Commission, if I may just put it in that way, that is the Supreme Court of India. Now, 1952, it was already mentioned by Sri Ramesh ji, but allow me to quote it once again. Imagine the wisdom of Supreme Court way back in 1952. Obviously, we are none when compared to the legendary men who walked through the corridors then. In 1952 itself, Supreme Court envisaged the position that there can be no interference by the courts in issues concerning election, which is helmed by an independent constitutional authority called the Election Commission of India. That is the number. That is the Ponnuswamy judgment. If not for 1952, I'm sure we would have suffered innumerable amendments in respect of the election laws and say innumerable interdictions and interferences by the courts of. Now, thanks to the very wise judgment laid down in 1952, over a period of time, the law developed with the remarkable judgment of 1978, Mahindra Singh Gill, and of course, for the specific case of state election commissions, the silver lining of the case of Kishan Singh Tomar. Now, if I may just digress for one moment and again re-gear my short insight into this election laws. Mr. Ramesh Kumar is not new to handling such tough environment. One very important fact, or say a factual situation which wasn't brought to the notice of probably, I'm sure some few of his colleagues would definitely be privy to it. He was the principal secretary to the governor when this state of Andhra Pradesh was in the most difficult, in a very tiring, in a very tiresome, say, tears also rolling down circumstances, was bifurcated. And he was the able officer with the governor who oversaw a period of president's rule, the bifurcation of the two states. And he was the one, allow me to borrow a few leaves from his book. He was the one, I'm sure, who wrote down the oath for both the respective chief ministers in 2014, which was read out by two again very maverick politicians. So, to give you a very frank picture, the current incumbent government chose to misread or rather misunderstand the caliber of this gentleman, who was asked to move on from his seat merely because a brutal majority was awarded in favor of the current ruling party. Now, this is where essentially I wish to focus on. Say, when you have a brutal majority-based government and constitutional entities, how do they function? Because Constitution says legislature and the citizen's right is paramount. His right to vote, or say a citizen's expression of voting a person to represent him on the floor of the house is paramount. But on the other hand, you have constitutional entities who are appointed by the Constitution with certain protections granted to them. And how do they function? In this sort of a conflict, what is it that the people are losing out, or what is it that they're gaining? Is there any conflict in the first place? Is one of the first questions for us to determine. If so, where is it that we are losing? Now, the biggest loser in such sort of a conflict between two necessary entities which have the protection of the Constitution is the democratic fabric. which takes its own beating. Now, the importance of the State Election Commission in the background of, say, a legislature which has its own brutal majority. It is the grassroots democracy which is protected and, say, supervised by the Election Commission. In the concept of first among equals, the Election Commission of India may play the role of having a broad-shouldered elder brother. But as a true student of Constitution, allow me to give a very honest opinion that it is the state election commissions which essentially play the main role of protecting the constitutionality of the state. That is by ensuring that the grassroots democracy remains in its place as it is destined to by virtue of the 73rd and 74th Amendment. Now, a very interesting background is why were 73rd and 74th Amendments introduced? This was, in fact, conceived by the Constituent Assembly by the then great wise Ben, but it could not take shape because I'm given to understand, or say few of the notes and my research reveals that the Election Commission of India was given the responsibility of installing a sort of a mechanism to supervise the grassroots democracy. Since that did not take shape due to various reasons, the 73rd and 74th Amendments have come into place with the state election commissions given the task of supervising the grassroots level democracy. In fact, I wish to put it in this way. The state election commissions have the sacrosanct duty of protecting the grassroots democracy. So therefore, if I may underline my first insight, or rather the most important insight which I want to put forth on the table of this afternoon, is I wish to frame this as an expression that the Election Commission of India, as the state election commissions of the election commissions of the respective states, have to be given the tag of being the constitutional institution pari materia with that of the Election Commission of India, and that their constitutional independence is protected by the Constitution, and the state governments got to respect the same. The priorities, if I may move to the second, that is the priorities for the state election commissions, and likewise the powers that are exercised by them, which go hand in hand with their priorities, come under an umbrella called the immunity, that any decision taken by them stands protected to the extent that it does not disturb the fundamentals, the basic structure of the Constitution. That is, it should not violate the fundamental right of any person. Now, interestingly, the period from July 2020, Mr. Ramesh Kumarji was kind in giving you a sequence of events starting from March. Now, I do not wish to revisit the same because he was absolutely clear and cut with the respective dates and the sequence of events that transpired. Permit me to give you a bird's eye view of what transpired between July 2020 to 31st March 2020. When Mr. Ramesh's decision was questioned in the Supreme Court of postponing the election to COVID, his removal, reinstatement, and thereafter taking charge, he wanted to take up the issue of finishing the task of holding the local body elections, which have been long overdue to the state of AP. Now, when were the last elections, local body elections conducted in AP? That was way back in sometime in 2013 or 2014. Since then, there were repeated petitions being filed in the court, and the court was directing the Election Commission of AP, the State Election Commission of AP, Andhra Pradesh, to hold the elections, which was not moving ahead. The ball was not gathering its respective speed to finish the task. Now, when he takes up the decision, state very interestingly opposes it on the ground that there would be an outbreak of second wave, and therefore his decision is ridden with non-application of mine. Now, imagine a state government opposing its own election commission. Now, at that same point of time, we had the opportunity of relying upon the decision of the Karnataka High Court, which was faced with a similar situation. The Rajasthan High Court, which was faced with a similar situation. And also allow me to recall the period of October and November, the assembly elections conducted in Bihar. So, in fact, I sought to I sought to rely more on the Karnataka High Court decision, very well penned by a very learned judge, the Chief Justice of Karnataka High Court, Justice Oka, who for the first time, or say, according to me, for one of the probably the first such judge to give some clarity to the inter se relationship between a state government and a state election commission. He says that whenever the state government and election commission are in a consultative process, whatever the state government offers its so-called piece of advice to the election commission, it shall be treated and taken as a feedback, but not any sort of a diktat. So this was something, this one line actually gave me the platform to display my little skills. Let me tell you, I was a very small hand when compared to the experienced hand of Mr. Ramesh. But this little hand of mine was given the small few swords, small sized knives or swords were given to me by the judgment of Karnataka High Court, and of course some few very important decisions rendered by the Supreme Court previously, which was one most important among the many is Kishan Singh Tomar. So, see, sometimes you have to definitely dig into the background of the factual situation to discover why the court arrived at such a decision. So that helped me to a great extent, because in the background of Kishan Singh Tomar, and also let me tell you the case of Aparmita Singh, that background helped me to lay a foundation to the decision and to ensure that the election commissioner, my job is to ensure that election commissioner wants to reach his destiny, and he has to live up to the promise made by him to the constitution or to the people. Allow me to put it in a very clear terms. So the state government's petition opposing the election process was opposed. Then the High Court disposes of the case, directing both of them to enter into a consultative process. The consultative process was undertaken. The fears of COVID second wave were allayed. It was assured, or rather, the state was called upon to provide the infrastructure and necessary installation of the COVID measures for effective conduct of the election. Now, very wisely, when a senior gentleman like Mr. Ramesh is discharging duties, the state should have had the little, I do not wish to use wisdom for them, because over the period of service along with Mr. Ramesh, we came to a conclusion that they lack it. So that is how we had taken certain decisions much before the horse could walk in, the cart was ready. So they again misread the situation. They questioned this decision before the High Court. In a very interesting turn of events, initially the election gets stayed, but the division bench very happily they tread upon the right line of the law and they overturn the decision of the single judge, and the elections, the notification was re-notified in the terms of the High Court. Matter goes to the Supreme Court. In Supreme Court, the Employees Association engineer a petition as well, questioning this election process, whereby they say so and canvass that their lives are threat because of COVID. Now, this all happens in January when everything was going back to its normalcy, or rather things were normal. Supreme Court sticks to the rule of law, gives a castigating order on the employees more than the state government. In fact, there was a comment made that the state came up with a very poor set of grounds even to make out a case for a stay. So that is how Mr. Ramesh Kumar was again armed with the notification for the election. Now the real part of the season 3 commences, like any other series which we have been accustomed to thanks to the COVID waves. Every day we were flooded with petitions opposing every single decision of Mr. Ramesh Kumar. And in the most unfortunate circumstances, he is added as a party in his personal capacity in every petition. No, on day one, it was taken into stride. On day two, when every such Tom and Harry's come up with such petitions, making such baseless untenable and absolutely non-applied mind petitions to the court. A reverse care was put into place whereby their very locus was questioned. See, this is where for the first time I felt as a true student of law and also say as an aspiring counsel, a practicing counsel, the importance of having a very good counsel to a constitutional authority. Well, I do not wish to. I'm not deliberately pulling certain feathers to my crown or to say it. It's not a self-certified statement, but it was the wisdom of Mr. Ramesh Kumar which greatly guided me, if I may put it on that plane. As I told you, I was the smaller hand and the smaller engine. But it was Mr. Ramesh Kumar's deep insight which came with his experience on reading the pulse of the then government, which was trying to ride on its so-called majority which it holds on the floor of the Legislative Assembly. These decisions which were taken by us, none of them were interfered by the court, except for one good decision of Mr. Ramesh Kumar, which was interfered because of the non-cooperation of the state government. That is a mobile app which he wanted to launch for the Election Commission. But I would actually say this. It was a false bogey. We nicely fooled the government with such an app, and which they came running to the court with few public interest litigations were engineered by the state government. While the state was flogging the dead horse, we actually succeeded in installing a very successful call center, which was more accessible to the grassroots level citizens of the state of AP than an app. In fact, personally, I hold this view that more than an app, it is a call center which would be more effective, because it's far more easier to dial it than open an app and press a button, which will have its own share of instructions. For example, I will be very honest. I am sometimes far more inexperienced with these apps on my phone than my two young fellows at home. So this call center was definitely a wonderful welcome step made by the Election Commission, and it had made the desired effect, which was which it did make. Now, if I may just again for one moment go back to the preliminary umbrella argument which I raised, or rather the topic, that is immunity. What every election commission is required to say, I wouldn't put it to be to say, be briefed, that they are free to take a decision. They have the necessary immunity power, the immunity granted by the Constitution. And if it goes to the court of law, the court would definitely look into it without any, say, element of malafide or a taint of over excessive use of power. So the free hand of decision making is needed by the state election authorities, because for a long time, the attitude of the state election commissions have been that we are subordinate. Like how Mr. Saharia ji has introduced the topic, for barring very few, I'm really, I will borrow these few words from his speech, from his statement. Barring few persons, rarely you have seen people exercising the exercise of power, which the Constitution allows them to freely exercise to do so. They have this immunity, which for long has been forgotten. Now, the steps which are required to be taken, essentially by an election commission, the state election commissions, Mr. Ramesh Kumar's topic, his pet project, that is the criminalization of politics, which he wanted to decriminalize. Now, a system, once it is in place, it's highly difficult unless or until a case like Kishan Singh Tomar comes into place again, which canvasses a new argument or upholds a new argument. Now, till then, what can the election commission do? At best, go to follow the rule book, instruct the local authorities to follow the law, whereby criminal cases can be registered, or there is something called election commission, even putting someone under a house arrest, a detention. Now, this is a very interesting subtopic. I want to round off my given this 25 minutes with this particular interesting issue and aspect. When Mr. Ramesh Kumar was ably dealing this issue, dealing the elections, two gentlemen, two or more than two, or in fact, these two are like the Pied Pipers, or say they call themselves, or the captains of the respective groups in the ruling party or wherever that is. I do not wish to take the names. They, with the free access of media and media houses and media vans, always landing up at their doorstep. They, in the most favored language, with the most abusive words of expletives, they were making the best of their choicest of abuses on the commission, which demoralizes the commission, and which also shows to the public that these political leaders are far more powerful than the constitutional authority. That is where it was decided. It is time that they need to know that a lesson that they need to be taught a lesson. It is essential. Being a public representative, he can't behave in that manner. So I was tasked, or rather, we were tasked with this very interesting issue as to how does the law support us. My immediate little research drew me to an incident sometime in early 2000 in the state of Uttar Pradesh, or say, I'm sorry, in 2007, when a lady becomes a chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, with again with a brutal majority, where she successfully stitches up an interesting combination of vote bank, and she seats her as she becomes the head of the state. Now the election, and during the Lok Sabha elections of 2009, Election Commission, it was brought to the attention of Election Commission that a minister of the cabinet of Uttar Pradesh is abusing the process, threatening the officials of the Election Commission of India, and is prejudicing a free, fair election. The Election Commission issues an oral instruction to detain this particular gentleman at his house because his movement around is detrimental to the interests of a free and fair election. The minister comes to the court, questions his detention, and the High Court faults the detention on the ground that it is an oral instruction, and there is no material for the Election Commission to have come to such a conclusion. So therefore, the decision was wrong. Now, this little incident was enough for us to actually cook up a very nice, tasty meal. Now that we're on a Sunday afternoon, I was actually, I wanted to add that spicy part to this afternoon on a Sunday afternoon. So the southern part of Maharashtra and the neighboring Andhra Pradesh districts are known for a very spicy food. And on a Sunday afternoon, it's mouth-watering. But on the contrary, it is Mr. Ramesh Kumar who started off with a very spicy, interesting insight into the election law. So allow me to stimulate or rather conclude the afternoon with this stimulating discussion on the powers of an election commission to sometimes, if I may put it in this manner, take law into hands. Now, here is the case where a cabinet minister of the state of AP was issued a direction to be put under house arrest. The superintendent of police was told to ensure that he doesn't step out of his house. And on the day next, he was supposed to attend quite a gala meeting, which was denied by the State Election Commission. Now, this minister, as was expected, he was furious. Now, this is off the record. But he came to the court officially. Now, this is on record. Court does not lay down a red carpet welcome to him. Court starts questioning the Election Commission as to how you have come to a conclusion that his presence and his statements would be detrimental to the interests of the public. We had the material. That is how we could plug the loophole which was found in the Allahabad High Court judgment with material to show that with the statements made by this minister, which voter would exercise his free will to cast his vote? Because this minister was openly canvassing that there should be a unanimous election and there shall be no opposition and no opponent to stand against a particular X, Y, and Z. This was the first instance. Now the second, another minister, now he wishes to be he wishes to become one more hero in the media, in the eyes of the media houses, or say with the people, with the citizens and the people glued to the televisions. He wanted to act as another hero. Now he makes his statements are far more worse than the earlier gentleman. So his case, we further improved it by putting him on a show cause, which is an essential element of principles of natural justice. He was asked to respond. His response was taken, and then proceedings were issued that he shall not step out of his house. And his case was again opposed quite successfully in the court, whereby we had prejudiced his petition by filing all his speeches into the court, which were the most, which carried the worst such explicitives you will ever find them available in the Telugu vernacular dictionary, and which are mostly, obviously, which are censored. So that is how Mr. Ramesh Kumar was successful in ensuring that two such ministers were taught certain rules of the law of the land, which was necessary in these circumstances. Now, this is where I said, I will go back to again my first statement, the immunity. The election commissioners should take decisions freely with their free application of mind to uphold the rule of law, because any decision which is taken by them is always can be couched and can be brought under the umbrella of immunity. So one final penultimate issue which I want to bring it to the attention of this floor is the interesting case of Aparamita Singh in Uttar Pradesh. Now, what happens there? Madam, I will not take more than 2 minutes.
Sure. Okay.
I'll conclude with this.
No, 2 minutes.
Yes, the bell which was brought to my attention as well. And yes, and again, I promised my wife at something at 5:30, so I'm conscious of the time. I'll find it out. Now, what happens in Aparamita Singh's case? The state government alters the rule of retirement from 65 to 67, also extending the tenure of service to 7 years, from 5 to 7. A new government comes into place. They again amend the rules, remove Mrs. Aparamita Singh, and they bring back the age to 65 to tenure of 5 years. Now, this lands up in the court. Now, the challenge made was that the state has no power to amend, and it's only the governor who can amend because he is the appointing authority. Now, very interestingly, the division bench consisting of two very learned judges, they give separate opinions and they differ with each other. It goes to a third judge. Now, what does the third judge do? The third judge opines with the junior judge on the issue there. The governor is the appointing authority under the Constitution. It is only the governor who has the power to accordingly change, alter, or amend under the principles of Constitution, or say without disturbing the constitutional fabric. Now, this was one of the sheet anchor arguments we could bring in to the case of Mr. Ramesh Kumar in his personal case, when he was very unceremoniously removed in the form of an ordinance which was passed during the first lockdown. And this is where we essentially canvassed to the court by a very learned senior counsel that it is the governor who has the power, prerogative, and the sole authority to interfere with the said position called the State Election Commissioner, who is protected under the Constitution of. Now, again, this is where the role of a governor also plays a very important significance. When you have a very active governor in West Bengal, we have an inactive governor in Andhra Pradesh. Now, what do we do in such circumstances? So that is where, when the issue of governor also cropped up, Ramesh Kumar brought into play his effective diplomatic skills which he had acquired with his stint at the Raj Bhavan, and with his stint at the Raj Bhavan, and that is why, probably to that effect, we had a smooth sailing with the office of the governor. But it's also my view, as a true student of law and a true student of the Constitution, that the governor, in issues of constitutionality of these entities which are protected in the Constitution, needs to play a very proactive role to ensure that the states do not tinker. So with this, lastly, I would also allow me to conclude on this note. It was not just an ordinary tumultuous period for Mr. Ramesh Kumar to have survived. There were threats made in all corners, and credit and kudos actually should go to his better half, who had allowed him to continue in spite of such hostile circumstances. So allow me to take this floor to also thank him who had provided me with the opportunity to apply my mind, to bring in certain raw ideas to the old existing Constitution, which was always open to new ideas. So I thank him, and I thank Mr. Saharia, and also I thank Mrs. Anuya Kumar, who was very kind with the first phone call we had we connected for a very smooth conduct of this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Advocate Ashwani Kumarji. We would now open the floor for question and answers or any comments or any clarifications. I would like to invite Sri Saharia Sarji to moderate this particular session. And I request our audience or anyone who wishes to ask a question or comment to first introduce himself or herself and then ask really very crisp, precise questions so that we are able to answer more questions in the limited period that we have in our hands. I propose that we take about 3 or 4 questions at a time, and then we request our speakers to answer the questions. So I request Saharia Sarji to moderate this, and the floor is really open for the group to ask questions.
Any question? Because we normally finish by 5 o'clock, but since we started late by about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can go till 5:15. Yes. Thank you. I'm sure there should be lots of doubts and questions in minds of those who were present or comments. I can see 3 very distinguished election commissioners here, 1 ex and 2 serving. So if they have any comments to offer.
Yes, sir, I'm Shah Jahan, State Election Commissioner, Kerala.
Yes, Shah Jahan,
Sir, Ramesh Kumar sir fought the case in favor of all. He had to face a lot of court cases in personal capacity also. So how could he manage all these cases? Second question is, has he documented the entire process for the benefit of others? That's all, sir. Thanks, sir.
Ramesh. You have to unmute yourself, Ramesh. You have to unmute.
So shall we take 2-3 questions together? A couple of questions more, maybe? Is that okay?
Right.
A couple of questions more so that our speakers can then answer it.
Can I?
Yes, Ajit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Sari, and thank you to Mr. Ramesh Kumar for a wonderful presentation. So I have 2 questions, actually 2 or 3, but please, given limited time. One is that how do you see this trend in Bengal, UP and other states of almost 1/3 or 1/4 of the seats in local elections going uncontested? And in fact, I think in Haryana, there has been now announcement to give a prize, a reward to a panchayat or a village if it puts up uncontested candidates. Don't you think this is actually going against the spirit of democratic representation? Second is that we admire that your campaign against criminalization of politics. But can you give us some suggestion? Because rather than depending on one Ramesh Kumar to fight the system with like a Superman determination and capability, it should not be that upholding democratic norms require such heroic standards. So can you suggest some practical reforms in election process which can make it easier for us? So these 2 questions, unelected, unopposed candidates, and what practical suggestions are there to reduce the criminalization in at least panchayat elections? Thank you.
I will respond, Mr. Saharia ji, because I precisely dealt with the situation of the unanimous elections. Before the Gram Panchayat elections were announced, the state government on one day brought huge advertisements announcing the rewards. This was given by the DIPR. I have immediately called the DIPR into question and I charge sheeted him. I said, you shall not give any advertisements on the eve of elections without the consultation of the election body. I have banned any further these kind of provocative kind of suggestive advertisements. But that is not the gist of the problem. What is happening here is, in Andhra Pradesh, you would think that It is only the muscle power which is preventing from people from filing nominations. Partly that. Partly it is a spoil system. There are economic incentives being offered rampantly even to contestants from, in the Gram Panchayat elections, of course, there are no party affiliations, but even in where party-based elections also, financial benefits are also offered. Threat on one hand, inducement on the one hand. Both are dangerous. In this particular case, there has to be a provision in the law to be built in where the commission feels that there is not a free prevailing atmosphere. He should have the benefit of extending the time of nominations, which is not available. That is one of the amendments which I proposed in the election reforms is where it becomes necessary in the opinion of the election commissioner to extend the period of nomination, he may do so. And he can do it across the board or on a case-to-case basis. I've done this. In one particular case, I would like to share my experience where a candidate goes in, before he enters the returning officer, all his papers are snatched by rowdies, they're torn. He goes home, by the time he builds up alternate set of records, the time is up. And the returning officer says, sorry, it has been brought to my notice. Sumato, I have issued an order under the plenary powers, extending the period of nomination in that particular constituency. This can be done as an extraordinary measure, but as a safeguard can be easily be built into the law. It is not impossible. This is what I have actually suggested. Second, with regard to the criminalization of politics, this is exactly the issue that is being agitated before the Apex Court the other day. I'm very happy to see that the argument made is that due diligence should also be exercised by the political party to vet the background of the people. If they fail to properly vet the background, there should be consequences on the political party. This matter is part heard, and the Apex Court will give its inkling in some time, but I think it is in the right direction. With regard to Mr. Shahjahan, what Mr. Shahjahan says is right. The vulnerability today is when cases are filed on the Election Commission in the personal capacity. Now, when a case is filed on a personal capacity, you don't have any legal aid. You have to fight it out of your personal resources. You imagine if I were to say that these are the cases filed in my personal capacity, please grant me legal support, the government would shut it down. So that is the catch-22 situation. It is here that you must have a rich network of friendships, and you should have a rich network of support groups. In my case, there are more than, there are quite a few well-meaning people in the system who feel it is an honor to defend a commissioner in his personal capacity for no consideration. Ashwin Kumar is one such. And there is a senior Supreme Court counsel, he is one such. The former Advocate General who represented me in one such. These are people of great honor and merit, and they feel that they should lend their shoulder for a worthy cause. So our networks, our credibility, and our relationships become necessary. And more importantly, how does the court perceive us? Unless the court perceives us positively, there will be no remedy. So in my case, I've been thankful that there is a very positive perception of the Election Commission and the cause of the Election Commission by the judiciary. As I said, I didn't lose a single case.
Yes. Some more questions?
Yes, sir. Sanjay Prasad from
Gujarat. Yes, please.
I must congratulate Sri Ramesh Kumar for the struggle which he went through, and he succeeded in upholding the dignity and autonomy and independence of the state election commissions. A truly remarkable achievement which has been having great consequences to uphold the dignity of the commission. I would just like to mention that in Gujarat, elections were due in November, general elections to the district panchayats, taluka panchayats, and municipal corporations and municipalities. Due to the COVID situation, we postponed it to February. And then we had the elections very peacefully without any issues. But at the same time, as Ramesh Kumar said, in certain cases, we had to use the plenary powers to extend the time for the filing of the nominations, etc., and certain other decisions. And all the decisions were challenged in the High Court and in the Supreme Court. And I would like to say that the judiciary, in each and every respect, they have upheld the powers of the commission and passed the orders which have in fact enlarged the powers of the commission, saying that where there is a gray area or in order to have free and fair elections, we can even overstep the legislative provisions and take action under our plenary powers. So I would say that the judiciary in India has been very effective and the independence of the commission has been upheld. And another issue is that the election commissions are duty bound to hold the elections within 5 years because the constitution specifically says that the term shall be 5 years and no more. So the word no more has been added in the constitution, which is a very emphatic thing. And while on the other hand, for the state legislatures and the parliament, the term can be extended by six months at a time. There are constitutional provisions for that. But for the self-governing institutions, there is no such provision and the term is no more. And I would say that Shri Ramesh Kumar's efforts and also the efforts of Ishad in sort of conceptualizing all these issues, they're being very helpful in seeing that the state election commissions become more effective. One point I would like to just flag that Shri Ramesh Kumar had pointed out this issue of migrant labor and the voting rights for this migrant labor. I think this issue requires further thought by the social scientists, intellectuals, and the commissions, etc., and how the voting rights of the migrants can be safeguarded, because often we find that before elections, they are all moving out, going back to the villages to vote, and then they again come back. And we had this experiment of online voting, which I think we are going to further strengthen. But I think that is a direction where we can fully enfranchise the poorest of the poor, the migrant workers. I think some direction more institutionalized on online voting or registration as a voter, I think we will have to debate and find some good answers to these issues, which Mr. Ramesh Kumar highlighted. Thank you.
Yes, very nice, Mr. Sanjay Prasad. I'm happy that
these are very
your elections have been, your actions have been upheld by the courts. I'm very happy.
Yes.
Sanjay Srivastava, SCUT.
At the cost of repetition, I like to place on record my appreciation from my side and my colleague state election commissioners that he has taken a task to up to right place, and a lot of good impact is there in the government also about the status and the importance of the state election commission. And I want to assure Dr. Ramesh and his learned counsel and Dr. Saharia, who is still associated with the standing committee in one form or other, that we will be next meeting. We are also discussing how we can highlight the status and the importance to be given to the State Election Commission. And in this, the fight taken up by Dr. Ramesh will also help us. And thank you so much. And it was a very enjoyable and very informative talk. And we get all encouragement out of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. Any more questions?
Sir, I have two questions.
Yes. Yeah.
I have two questions. One is from the local point of view, and thank you very much for giving the very live speech, and it was very helpful. First question is, we are working with local governments with the panchayats. So in day-to-day process, we really meet these people, meet the voters, and day by day, local voters who are really genuine voters, they are becoming anti-election. They say that in a village, when election comes, whole village is disturbed. So there should not be election. As Dr. Ranade has said, unopposed election also is coming out of that, that one of the factors is this. I think this is very important, that how to make understand these people that election is for them and election is good. I think how to make them love the election, because local voters at village level are going against the election is the fact which we are actually directly working with the panchayats. This is first question and challenge for us. Second is, I heard that State Election Commission, there is a federation. So I want to ask Dr. Ramesh Kumar that what was the role of State Election Commission Federation in your fight? Thank you.
I would answer the question. This is a very valid question. The role of the Election Commission generally is ending at the time of the election. We withdraw suddenly. There is a vacuum. But in the crucial period, in 2 months, there have been consequences. People are targeted for supporting one candidate or the other. And it is the charge of the state government and it is the charge of the criminal justice to take care of them. But they don't do it. They play favorites. So people are demoralized. They feel they are being victimized post-election. It is the psychological atmosphere is not right. That is why I suggested a reform that the Election Commission should have an extended guardianship for a period of 2 months to ensure there is no backlash, there is no victimization. Even in case there are cases of violence, the Election Commission will direct the police authorities to act to protect these kind of voters. Then they will not be demoralized. Unanimous elections, sir, is generally a feature of a small percentage where the entire community will come together and they will elect a man of honor as the sarpancha, as the pramukh or whatever it is. But today that is not the case. The unanimous elections are today, they are bought. The rich people, they come and there is a common cause auction. The successful bidder becomes the sarpanch. This is dangerous tendency in many panchayats which acquired an urban character around the metropolis. This is a major kind of a challenge we are living with. So we have to take a campaign that willy-nilly, if it comes to the notion that these posts are auctioned to the rich people, election should be annulled. This I am determined. The third thing is, Srivastavaji is currently the chair of the Empowered Committee. The Empowered Committee of the Commission have to take up common cause. They have taken some common causes before, especially with regard to technology and also technology upgradation and things like that. But the case I mentioned in the case of the Supreme Court is a vital question. I would like to flag it as to who is the appointing authority for the Election Commission. This is hanging fire. So that is where Srivastavaji's assurance that he is going to implead himself as a party has gladdened me, because I am going to fight the case. I am a common citizen. At my own cost, I will fight the case for common good. Thank you.
Thank you. I think now
I think, sir, we are already running short of our time. So I would take on from you.
I'll just make a few remarks and then I'll hand it over to you, Anya.
Sure.
Now, I fully agree with all the speakers, especially Dr. Ramesh Kumar. Ultimately, I personally feel that the Constitution has given enough authority to the State Election Commission. Not enough authority, in fact, the total authority and immunity. The State Election Commissioners have to exert themselves, even at the cost of personal suffering. This is a little tall order, but I think by supporting each other, by educating each other, this can be done in the present circumstances. There's a corollary to that, the appointment of the State Election Commission. In most of the states, the State Election Commissions are being appointed only, I shouldn't be saying, but at the choice of the Honorable Chief Minister. There is no independent system of appointment of the State Election Commissioners. In fact, I had suggested to my state government that the state election commissioner should be appointed by a panel of 3, including Chief Minister, Leader of Opposition, and the Chief Justice. This will give an independence to the state election commissioner and authority to him. That is my point. And third thing which I would like to say, that state must be asked. Now, we can state election commissioner, the first responsibility of this conducting the elections is of the state election commissioners. They must exert in the given circumstances. But as a corollary to that, state governments must also amend their state laws in tune with the constitution. Many state laws are still not in conformity with the constitution. According to me, they are ultra vires ab initio. For example, deciding the reservation, deciding the dates of the election, deciding the boundaries of the ward, if it is left to the state government by the state laws, state governments will never do it on time. Since they are not done, the demarcation, the reservation, elections cannot be held by the state election commission. So these powers must automatically used by the state election commission. Now, this is a tough battle. In the absence of an amended law, state election commissioners are finding it difficult. So maybe judiciary can play a role here. But it's a many-pronged battle which has to be fought for giving democracy at the grassroots level its due share. Thank you. Back to Anya.
Thank you, sir. You have very, very aptly summarized the entire discussion. So now I take this opportunity to thank both our esteemed speakers, Dr. Ramesh Kumarji and Advocate Ashwani Kumarji, for gracing this webinar and for your very valuable inputs. I would also like to thank Shri Saharia Sarji for his contributions as well. A very big thank you to all our esteemed audience for being such an attentive and active audience. Apologies, we couldn't really do justice by giving you more time for Q&A, but I guess we would definitely find another opportunity to, to get back and to continue with this kind of dialogues and discussions. Thank you to all the partners of the Grassroots Democracy Platform, RSCD, ADR, Mumbai University, and CLJ. And finally, a very big thank you to Balbirji and Avinashji for giving this technical support. I would just, on a final note, say that take care, everybody, stay safe, and I wish everyone a very lovely evening ahead. Thank you so very much. See you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuyaji.
Thank you, Bimbo.